Hey, what's up, Swits? Wow, it's been a minute since I said that. First of all, apologies that I sound like a frog. I'm somehow still getting over the flu. And I know that it has been more than a minute since I have covered anything ESO related on my channel. But Zoss just made a post with some pretty monumentous news that I needed to break my ESO silence on to come address. First, some quick context. So I'm not gonna lie, I have barely played any ESO since I swapped the direction of my channel. Firesong forced crashes on me that kept me from playing ESO for nearly a full week that really broke my spirit from even attempting to play the game anymore. To this day, I have yet to complete any of the quests in the new zone, unlock the druid deck, or do anything. I basically hop on once a week to host an overland event for Artea's guild and then log off until next week. Update 36 was so horrendous it basically killed the little optimism that I had left. Despite that, I still keep an eye on all the news and updates weekly just to make sure I'm still in the loop on what's going on. Which is why I saw Monday's post from the studio director talking about the future of ESO. For the TLDR version, they addressed that Update 36 was a nightmare for the game and something that they're still fixing. But they also addressed some points I've made in previous videos that I've also heard echoed by other content creators. Now for the record, I still don't think anybody at Zoss has watched any of my videos. I mean, they featured my Druid King deck guide on the community website, even though I got a major mechanic of it wrong. But these were points that were definitely being shared by a larger portion of content creators as well. So with that out of the way, let's talk about what 2023 is going to look like for ESO. Quarter 1 will be the typical dungeon DLC, nothing really changing there. Going into Quarter 2 is where we're going to see the first big changes. For Quarter 2, the team will be releasing the usual chapter DLC, but with some new changes to go along with that. For one, the story won't be continued in Quarter 4. I literally made an entire video about how this year-long adventure idea had gotten really tired and was entirely too predictable, with the big bad always making their escape until the end of Quarter 4, so it's good to see that that's finally being ditched and thrown in the dirt. This year's story is being advertised as much larger and more detailed than the previous chapters. That's great if it's true, because it's basically going to be taking up the Quarter 4 DLC slot also, as we'll talk about later. But we'll have to wait and see how that actually turns out. Now for the real nerd-shattering news. Quarter 3 is being devoted entirely to quality of life improvements and bug fixes. Okay, so let me break down why that is enormous news for those who don't appreciate it. First of all, it's absolutely what the game needs. ESO's release cycle basically meant that the game was moving at a breakneck pace on the upper end of things. I know this was a big point of contention for a lot of players, as the game moved so quickly that your gear was being replaced absurdly quickly as the item sets were released broken, then they got nerfed, and then the meta would shift to compensate for that. And I really need to reemphasize that this was happening every single quarter. Zoss had a really bad habit of releasing items or system overhauls without enough testing and it having dramatic impact on unexpected areas of play. That's without addressing the bugginess of each patch getting increasingly more frustrating with each release. Again, I feel like I have to reiterate that it was a solid week before I could even attempt to play Firesong, and that was with all of my add-ons disabled. That's entirely unacceptable and killed any enthusiasm I had for the game at the time. And looking back on a lot of my videos where I ranted about the state of the game, one of the comments that I got a lot and consistently made me laugh was people saying that Zoss needed to take a year off and fix the game. That comment came up a lot, and I consistently rolled my eyes at it every time. Not because the people who were saying it were wrong, but because it was so wholly unrealistic. If you're lucky enough not to work in a corporate job, take it from me, a corporate office drone when I'm not pretending to be a fantasy racist online, for nearly every company in the world, while you got one developer on one end saying a product needs more polish before it can be released, on the other end is a corporate overlord and their only concern is about how quickly they can make the number on their sales go up by any means necessary. So the idea of taking a year off where the game isn't producing new content to bring in new players and make bigger sales is laughable. Again, I completely agree with you. A solid year off to polish the game is 100% what it needs. But I'm also a realist who knows that there's exactly zero scenarios where that would ever happen. But to take off a quarter of a year to work on bug fixes and abandoned systems is huge, like enormous. I literally never in 10,000 years would have guessed that there was even the smallest probability of that happening. Is it as much time as the devs need to make a huge impact? No, but it is a hell of a start. And it is the best space for it. Q3 tends to be the slowest season of ESO anyway, as the chapter in Q2 is the biggest release of the year, so it definitely makes sense. But I feel I really need to emphasize what a huge deal this is, as it means there's no dungeons for Q3, which means there's less incentive for players to keep a rolling sub during that time. That is a really daring play, and one that I actually really respect them for making. So lastly, Quarter 4 is kind of mysterious. Zoss has stated that instead of a zone DLC, there will be some kind of new system integrated. This seems to pair with something that they mentioned earlier in the statement about how they want to focus less on one and done content and more on repeatable content that players will come back to experience. The reveal event is going to be in January, and they'll be showing off both the new chapter as well as whatever this new mysterious system is, so we'll just have to wait and see before we make judgments on that one. I know it sounds increasingly bizarre that the thing that I am most excited for this year is lack of content in Quarter 3, but it is sorely what the game needs. So that finishes covering up the statement. I did have one last thing I wanted to talk about before I go though. I made a number of videos in the last year hinting that I wanted to go to Necrom and the Telvanni coast for my dream expansion zone. Well, in the time since I made those videos, some of the coolest fans that I have absolutely bombarded me with data mined information suggesting that the Telvanni coast is probably the next chapter. First, I just want to make mention that none of that stuff was out when I suggested that zone. I am just a prophet of Azura. Secondly, while I wanted to be excited about the prospect of visiting that zone I've always wanted to go to, the idea that it might be anything like the Year of High Isle really bummed me out. I really didn't want to go there if it meant the zone was always going to be associated with bugginess and broken game mechanics. So, in the background, I've actually kind of been dreading next year's chapter announcement, up until now that is. Obviously, talk is talk, and we'll have to actually see whether Zoss follows through on these bold plans, but I am finding my optimism for ESO returning for the first time in a long time. As I mentioned, the big reveal is going to be in January, and it happens to be right around the time that my birthday is. This year is a big one for me because I'm turning... So I've been dreading this birthday for a while now, and it would seriously cushion the blow to know that I'm going to my homeland in Tamriel, and that it's actually going to be good content worth experiencing this year. That about covers it for this video. But I do want to hear from you guys. Leave a comment and let me know what you guys are all thinking about the 2023 release schedule. I'm curious to hear what you think. For anybody hoping that this is my big return to ESO content, I'm really sorry to disappoint you. I'm sticking with the new channel direction of just making fun videos that I have with my friends, but I did say that I would come back to cover anything that I felt was worth talking about in ESO, and this felt colossal to me. That said, if you do want to support me and what I do, consider watching this week's Rumbleverse video maybe? I swear by Azura, I think it's a funny video, and I'm still planning to release part 2 next week despite the less than stellar reviews for part 1. But, until we meet again on the plains of Ardenfell, I've been Old Salty Sean, saying smoke skooma and worship Daedra.
Stand up. There you go. You were dreaming.